Recovered alcoholic. My name's Pat Rogan.
Pat Rogan.
Thanks to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous outlined in this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the program of AA, I have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, and for that, I can't even tell you how grateful I am. And thankful. It's a good week to be thankful, right? Everybody that's sitting here should be thankful. I know some of you don't feel that way. I can see it on your faces. But it's a disease of perception. And I always say, half the room is here because they can't wait to get here and hear whoever's speaking here and get to a meeting, and this is exactly where they want to be, and then the other half of the room wishes they would never be here, and they can't believe they're here listening to this asshole. And you're both sitting in the same room listening to the same person say the same thing. And the only difference is perception. And this is a disease of perception. And someday, even if you don't want to be here, you're going to realize you do want to be here. And that you get to be here, not need to be here, but you get to be here. And I mean, we come in here needing to be here, but then we realize we get to be here. And it's just such a blessing to be here, and especially this week of Thanksgiving. It just makes me feel great. And this is my happy place. I mean, it was a miserable ass day today at work, and I couldn't wait to get here. Because this is just where I get that relief that I used to get in a bottle. So, what the hell am I talking about? So we've laid the foundation of the program in the first 5 steps, and this is the foundation that's going to take us through the rest of the program. These were the necessary steps to build the way of life that we're going to continue. We're going to start living, and obviously, the surrender and the admission that there's no human power on this planet that's going to keep me stopped are the 2 necessities of the first 2 steps, the ABCs. Being convinced that those 2 steps are a requirement for recovery, not for membership, not for a seat, but for recovery. We have to admit that there's no way I can stay stopped on my own, and no human power. And if you're me, somebody like me, and I don't know if you are or not, that there was no child, no wife, no career, and no judge that could keep me stopped. There were no consequences. I'm not here via consequences. You know why I'm here? Alcohol stopped working. That's why I'm here. Alcohol would no longer justify my behavior. Alcohol would no longer give me absolution after I violated your principles and mine. And when that stops working, I ran out of options. And I was fortunate to have a member of my family in this particular fellowship. And I reached out to her, and she took me to my first meeting. And that's how I'm here. I'm here not because I wanted to be here, because I had no other choice but to be here. I didn't know it was either put a gun to my head again, which I had already tried once, and shot my waterbed, which did not go well. It destroyed the moment. And I didn't have the guts to try it again. Anybody like me, they figure my luck, I'll survive it, right? And I'll end up a vegetable in a wheelchair, the rest of my life. I mean, that's the kind of shit that goes through my head. I'll shoot myself and I'll be normal, but I won't be able to talk. Anyways, so we made a decision to change our behavior and seek God for guidance. That was the decision. That my behavior is the issue. How do I reel into my behavior? Well, I need to seek God to reel in that behavior. I need to seek God's help to change the way I act, so that it would change the way my life is. It would change my life. If I could change the way I think, if I could change my perception, my emotions would change, therefore my actions would change, and my life would change. And that was the decision I made. And then I took that action in 4 and 5, and I saw the truth about myself. A frightening truth. And we were just sharing about this at the meeting before this. What my truth was, oh my God, this is all my fault. Right? I'm done blaming everybody. I saw the truth in my 4th step. I saw my responsibility in every single situation, but one that I shared with you last week was my father. I didn't play a part in that. I didn't play a part in that part of the dysfunction. except that I became him. Except that what brought me here was being my father. I hated my father for assaulting my mother, and guess how I got here? I assaulted my children's mother. That's how I got here. And in step 5, I got free. I got free. That was where my spiritual experience came. It doesn't happen for everybody. I know Stevie talks about having one in 3. I know people that have it in 9. I know people who have it as a result of living 10, 11, and 12. Mine came in 5. I had a spiritual experience in step 5. I left Father Quinn's office, and a whole new life came into view. It was the first time in my life that I was at peace without a substance in my body. The first time in my life I can ever remember. I'm talking as far back as I can remember, like at 5, 4, 5, 6 years old. It was the first time in my life I can remember going just, I want more of this. I want more of this. How do I get more of this? You know. And that's what I've been doing. I've been chasing more of that. How do I and we got steps that'll, when I get out of that, I can get back in that. You know. That's what the rest of these steps are. How do I keep that? How do I reel in my behavior? How do I keep that feeling moving forward? And I got to make a confession. I left something out of my 5th step. And this is what I tell my guys when we do a 5th step. After we're done, did you do the best you can at this time? Did you do, and I tell you, just do the best you can at this time. Do not do your 5th step because of the one thing. Do not do it because of that one thing that's haunting you. You know? And I know the book says, was I thorough? We sit at home for an hour. Did I sell everything? Did I hold anything back? Sorry. I didn't even trust the priest with this one. You know? And it was sexual, I'll be honest with you. And it was kids being a kid. You know, it was young kids being a young kid. And I was embarrassed. And I did not want to tell a priest that. So do you know, as free as I was, as free as I felt, and even with the experience that I had, there was still that cloud. There was that little cloud, you know. It was that little lie, you know. Did you tell him everything? Oh, yeah. Yeah. And we'll talk more about this later on. What I found through experience, looking in the rearview mirror, looking at my past, what I thought was rejection was really redirection. Right? And this has happened over and over and over in my life, where I thought I had been rejected, and in reality I was redirected into a better place. And that's what happened there. I was the treasurer of a home group. I started a group, me and a couple guys started a group, and I was the treasurer of that group. My name was on the lease of that group, and somebody accused me of stealing money. And I lost it. Could you imagine you questioning this alcoholic addict's integrity? I mean, that's just... Who would do that? And to make a long story short, I hit the guy in the head with the checkbook. It was the anniversary night. My sons were there. They witnessed my recovery, you know. And if it hadn't been for my older son stepping between me and this guy, there would have been more damage done. And I left that group, never to return, and went to a group out in West Boca. It ended up being the Boca Boys Club, which I talk about a lot. And I met Howard Cohen. And I heard Howard's story, and Howard pretty much told my dirty secret from the podium. Right? And I asked Howard to sponsor me that night, and Howard was my sponsor for the next 10 years up until the day of his death. And I was able to get free. It was 5 years later I was able to get rid of that one thing that was haunting me. And I'm just thankful that I did not do my 5th step because of it. You know. And I would have never experienced that relief that I got in my 5th step. So the book says if we've been thorough, if we've done the best we can at this time, that's me, the best I can at this time, we move into step 6 and 7. And there's no coincidence that 6 and 7 is plugged in between 8 and 9 and 5. You know? The tools of change, right? The tools of change. Okay? 2 steps, by the way, that Bill added. We look back at the tenets in the forward to the second edition, where Bill talks about the 6 tenets that he took from the 28 tenets of the Oxford groups. He talks about surrender, inventory, confession, restitution, helpfulness to others, and a belief and a dependence upon God. Right? He adds 2 steps at the beginning of that from William James. He adds steps 1 and 2. Right? He adds a get ready step in the restitution step. In step 8. He adds a spot check inventory in the dependence upon God. And then he adds 6 and 7 right in the middle. Right in the middle. Right? Everything, in my opinion, everything leads here and everything leads back here. Right? 2 of the shortest steps of the book. And to use, is it Ed Dowling's words? This is the steps that separate the men from the boys, the women from the girls. This is the step where you see what we're really made of. Because if nothing changes, guess what? Nothing changes. We're building an inventory again. That's what we're doing, right? We're still going out there. We're still stepping on people's toes because nothing changed. Our behavior is the same. We're still selfish, self-centered, driven by fear, self-delusion, and self-pity. And nothing changed, and we're building another 4-step. Okay. I put that in front of the camera. Sorry, folks. In my opinion, 2 of the shortest steps in the book, 2 of the most important steps in the book. 2 of the most important steps in the book. Right? And I don't think, people ask, well, Bill didn't know much about these steps. That's why they're so short in the big book. He goes, from 6 lines to 7 pages in step 6 in the 12 and 12, 13 years later. He goes from 7 lines to 7 pages in step 7 in the 12 and 12, 13 years later. I don't believe that. I believe that these steps were designed to work quickly. They were designed to be done rapidly. Right? Not like we do now. And look, they didn't have the fellowship to lean on like we have now either, right? What is there, almost 800 meetings in Broward County now, right? That you can go and lean on the fellowship. They didn't have that luxury. Dr. Bob was taking guys through the steps in half a day. Clarence was doing it in 1 day. They were taking people through the steps rapidly. You know where we address 6 and 7? 10, right? The spot check inventory, right? Where we become willing to let go of these defects of character. We ask God for help to let go of these defects of character. We start to change. We see where our character defects are helping us hurt other people. So we start changing, and then we move in to make the amends. Right? Some sort of demonstration has to take place before I go into 8 and 9. People are not going to believe me if I show up the same selfish, self-centered guy that they met before. I need to show up differently. The changes have to start taking place immediately. I start with, and this was my sponsor doing for me, and what I do for my guys, is start sending birthday cards out and stuff. I mean, when's your mother's birthday? When's your father's birthday? When's your parents' birthday? When's your kid's birthday? Send them a damn birthday card. They'll be shocked. And thrilled to get a birthday card. You could owe them hundreds of thousands. And when they see that card, they go, oh my God, look at this. The change doesn't have to be drastic at that point, but we have to show up different. When I showed up at my mother's, I had to bring something so she knew I wasn't going to rob her when I got there. Show up with something, anything. But show up different. Simple, right? I mean, really, simple. Stop doing what we shouldn't do and start doing what we should do. God, that sounds so simple, right? Stop lying. Tell the truth. Stop being inconsiderate. Start being considerate. Stop being dishonest. Be honest. It's been a way of life for a long time, right? Those selfish and those self-centered muscles are strong. They are developed. And why? Because I get something out of them. I get pleasure out of them. We go back to the third step conversation, right? These instinctual drives that drive us, right? This social instinct, the security instinct, and the sex instinct. Right? These three instinctual drives necessary for our survival. God wants us to do them, so he makes them pleasurable. But we are addicted to the pleasure that comes from satisfying those instincts. So we take them beyond what God intended them to be. We love attention. We're made to have attention. We're supposed to come together and work together. We're supposed to get along. I want to be liked and accepted. And when I'm liked and accepted, it feels good. And there's a dopamine dump attached to that. But I want more of that. And then I want more of that. And then I want more of that. And then I start lying and cheating and stealing to get more of that. I start making up something I'm not. Same with the material. It's never the right car. We talked about this. Never the right car. Never the right house. Never enough money. More, because the more I have, the better it makes me feel. I have that big day financially. Dopamine dump attached to that. I want more of that. How do I get more of that? Well, sometimes you have to step outside of honesty to get more of that. Or maybe it's not dishonest, it's just withholding the truth. We start lying to ourselves. Eventually we start stepping on the toes of other people. We start lying, cheating, stealing to get more. And then we're in conflict again. And the sex instinct's the same thing. Never enough. Never enough. Beautiful. Everything seems to lose its shine. I don't understand. You know? That's a Clancy quote right there. Everything loses its shine. You know? And I don't know why. And I shared with you guys, I think it was last week or the week before, you know, I've been in these beautiful relationships that I've blown up for moments of pleasure. For no reason but that. For the social aspect, for the security aspect, for the sex aspect. That's the measure of the defect of character, by the way. Where God intended those instincts to be, and then where I've taken them. There's the measure of the character defect. Where did I take them beyond what's acceptable to me and the people around me? I don't even care what society says. I don't even care. We know the truth. Deep down within every one of us is a soul, is God. That's the part that knows that it knows that it knows that I stepped outside of what I was supposed to do. You know, we talked about that last week. We don't judge anybody here. If what I'm doing is acceptable to my partner, then it's acceptable. You know? Especially in the sex area. You know? It's not about society, it's about who am I in a relationship with. I wish it was that simple, man. I do. I wish it was that simple. You know, society has kind of dictated what makes us successful, hasn't it? I mean, you know, here's the way I grew up. Son, you need to get a good education. So you'll get a good job, and you'll make good money, and then you'll get a nice car and a nice house, and you'll find a beautiful woman. And then you'll get married, and you'll live happily ever after. Right? And they have pictures of what that looks like. Right? I mean, they actually have billboards that have pictures of what that looks like. They have magazines that tell you, here's what you should look like to be successful. Okay? Man, woman, doesn't matter. Here's the watch you should be wearing. That dictates success. Here's the car you should be driving. That dictates success. Here's what the woman on your arm should look like. That dictates success. They tell us how tall we should be, what weight we should be, what we should be wearing, what we should be driving, and where we should be living to be successful. Why wouldn't we chase that? Why wouldn't we chase that? Who's had this conversation with their parents? Son, daughter, really, all you really need is a good relationship with God. And if you could get that relationship with God, everything else will work out. Anybody? A couple of you, right? A couple of you, some religious parents or religious background or spiritual background. Not me. That was not the conversation we had. You know? My dad taught me how to cheat banks. You know, how to write a check, get it verified, run to the bank, transfer that money to another account, and you get a free car for 3 months until they come and repo it. You know, you could drive a Lincoln for free for 3 months. You know? Right? Sounds like you guys did that. But you've done something like that. Yeah? So that was my whole life. I need to get the right job so I can get the right car so I can get the right girl. That was my whole life was wrapped up in that. There was nothing spiritual in that whatsoever. I shared with you guys, my spirituality went out the window in the 60s and 70s. When you guys were on the fun side of the island, I left the island where they talked about how I should behave in church, you know, that I'm going to go to hell if I continue down this road. Or if I go down that road, you're going to hell. If you go down this road, you're going to the gates of heaven. Or maybe halfway house, purgatory, you know. But then there was this other side of the island that said that's all bullshit. That's all a fairy tale. That's all Santa Claus. We're having a blast over here. You know, we're having sex anytime with anybody. We're smoking dope. We're drinking. We're having a blast. I fell in love with that side of the island. Yeah. There was a lot of fun on that, a lot of relief on that side of the island. And so I just disregarded. And my grandmother took us to church every week. I couldn't wait to not have to go to church. You know? Who knew? So what do? I create this fake person. Pastor Dave from CBG talks about creating this fake self. He calls it the first date self. You know, I create this persona that doesn't even exist, but that's what you know. That's what you meet when you meet me. Is this fake person? You know? The first date self. You know? And I live my life that way. I live my life fake. I shared with you guys about lying about seeing Eric Clapton and Pink Floyd, and, you know, in sobriety. I mean, I've done it sober, you know, or dry, if you will, you know, just so that you will like, just so that I can be part of. I'll be whatever you want to be, whatever you want me to be. I'll say whatever you want me to say, just to be part of, just to be liked and accepted. It's just the way I live my life. I love. Bill Wilson talks about the Forgotten Mountain. I think it's on page 100 in As Bill Sees It. It's one of my favorite little snippets in As Bill Sees It. And he talks about that he had this dream. I don't know if anybody's been to Vermont, but we went to the Wilson House. And next door to the Wilson House, Bill was born actually behind the bar at the Wilson House, which is ironic. But he lived with his grandfather next door at the Griffith House. And we were in his bedroom up in the Griffith House. It's above the library. And you look out the window and you can see Mount Eolus from there in Vermont. And Bill used to say that he would look out that window and he would dream of climbing that mountain. He would just can't wait to climb that mountain and look at East Dorset from the top of that mountain. And somebody shared, you guys picked up a medallion, shared about being in sports and had that dream of being the football player or the track star or whatever. I was a baseball player, you know. I played high school ball. I was on the JV and varsity baseball team, you know, and used to run with the track guys. We'd run 5 to 8 miles a day, you know. And my dream was to be a professional baseball player. I just couldn't wait to be a professional baseball player. Of course, then when you start drinking and smoking dope and cigarettes, and the running goes out the window, and so does the ambition to become a baseball player. The fudge, right? So Bill says, while I'm staring at this mountain, while I'm dreaming about climbing this mountain, my aunt, for my birthday, brings a plate of fudge. And that fudge was so delicious, I forgot all about the mountain. And I chased that fudge for the next 35 years. Right? And that's exactly what happened to me. You know, I found that bottle of Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill, right? And that dream of becoming a baseball player went out the window, and I chased that bottle for the next 20 years, from age 16 to 36 when I landed in here. The Forgotten Mountain, he calls it. He later talks about overcoming the mountain. He talks about the struggle to overcome the mountain as we struggle to overcome our addiction. Right? He talks about, going 3 steps up and then falling, and getting back up and taking another 4 or 5 steps and then falling back again. And the struggle and the pain and the anxiety and the fear that it was to get to the top of that mountain. But he says, while you're traveling up the mountain, don't forget to stop and look back and see how far you've come. Wow. Don't forget to remember where you were and where you are now. Now, I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I was. I'm nowhere near there. I've made a lot of progress, right? And that's really what this step is about, isn't it? Progress. We always say progress, not perfection, which is a cop-out in a way. Later in the 12 and 12, he says progress towards perfection. That we aim towards perfection. We want to be perfect. We know we're never going to get there. But in the journey, I'm going to become a better person. Kenny Kane, I'll never forget Kenny. We were doing when this clubhouse that I was part of, we used to have Kenny come in and do a step series for us every year. And I don't know what I was. I was probably 3 years sober or something, maybe 2 or 3 years sober. And Kenny was doing a step series. And Kenny was on step 6. And Kenny got up to the podium and he was talking about step 6. And he said, when I came into AA, they told me I had to lie less. I said, what? And he said, yeah, they told me I had to shoplift less. And I said, we have a liar and a thief doing a step series. And I wanted to call it Emergency Group Conscious. Kenny, I think, had 15 years at the time, and I'm thinking, this guy's a thief. We got to get rid of this guy. We can't have a hypocrite up there. Kenny was right on, wasn't he? Kenny was right on. Lie less. Cheat less. Right? Be less selfish. Be less dishonest. Be less inconsiderate. That's really what this is about. And eventually they start disappearing. You start not lying at all. You start being considerate most of the time. But I love one of my favorite paragraphs in the big book, which I probably said 20 times already, is right at the end of How It Works. Oh, shit.
Right at the end of How It Works.
Right at the end of How It Works, he talks about, suppose we fall short of the chosen idea and stumble, does that mean we're going to drink? And he said, no, not always. If we continue that behavior, knowing that we're hurting other people doing it, or going down that wrong road, then we are surely to drink. But if we recognize that we fell short, and we ask God to take us to better things, then we're surely not going to drink. And that's really what this is about. When we stumble and we fall, we get back up, we make the amends, and we ask God to take us to better things. Right? That's what this is about. This is progress towards perfection. Towards it. And the longer you're around here, the more the road narrows. Like what was acceptable when I got here. Look, I shouldn't say that.
It's true.
It is true. So I'm going to give you a couple examples, right? So I'll tell you what I was going to say, and hopefully it doesn't offend anybody, right? When I got here, I was a cheater. I was a pleasure seeker out there. There was no relationship I was ever in that I was loyal to. Right? And when I got sober, that behavior stopped. But I was on a porn site in the other room while my wife was in the bedroom. And you know what? I felt like I made progress.
About perception.
Yeah. Now you should ask her if I made progress. She did not feel that. Right? But you see what I'm saying? And eventually that offended me. I started being offended by my own behavior, and I stopped. Because I knew that it was offensive. Because you know what? Nobody had to tell me, because you know what? God knows. Right? You guys know me by reputation. God knows me in the dark. Right? That's Oswald Chambers right there. God knows me in the dark. God knows me when I'm alone. When nobody's watching. And that's where the progress really comes in for me, is when I offend myself. I can't believe you just lied. Why were you late for work, Pat? I hit traffic. No, I didn't. I got up late. But I told them I hit traffic, And I walk away from it going, damn, you just lied, But you look good, Yeah. And then I get confronted with that same situation again, and what happened, Pat? Why are you late? The bridge was up. No, it wasn't. I got up late again. And I walk away from it and go, damn it, you lied again. And then I'm late like a couple weeks later, and he looks at me and says, you're late again. And I go, I didn't lie. I walked away. Progress. Progress. That's what it's about. That's what it's about, though, right? It's about me. It's about the God within. So 2 quick stories. So I'm doing this stove, and I'm an expert at what I do, and I'm the best, And this lady starts telling me how to do my job when I get there, and I go, look, I've been at this for 30-some years. I know what I'm doing. Just back away, And I tap the cabinet. I'm doing a microwave installation, and I tap the cabinet, and a piece of wood falls right on her brand new range, and dents the top of the range. Right, and I look around, and I put my drop cloth over it again, and I continue to do the work. And every once in a while, I look and see if it went away. And I try to take my fingers and make it go away. And mentally, I'm trying to make it go away. I mean, I used to be able to move stuff on tables with some hallucinogenics back in the 70s, And I'm thinking about how do I get out of here without them noticing. And I'm like almost 20 years sober at this time. Right? I'm not a newcomer. Right? But what's it affected? It's affected my social instinct. It's affected my security instinct. It's going to be about money and reputation right here. And I don't want to hurt it. And I'm willing to lie to protect it. Right? And then something says, Pat, you can't do it. And I dented your range. And she says, just fix it. And I go, oh, okay. So I order the part. It comes in wrong twice. Right? Her husband calls me. He dropped a few F-bombs. And he said, either get me another range or I'm suing you. And I said, and I'm just telling you this story because this is why don't I trust the process? Why don't I just trust that if I do the right thing, good things will happen? Not maybe right then, but down the road, right? Why don't I just trust? Why can't I do my own taxes? Why is it that I can't look at those things and say, was that dinner a write-off or not? I can't. I'm just not capable. So I said, okay, I'll get it. So I go to the dealer who I work for. I've been working for 20, now I've been working for him for over 30 years. And I tell him what happens. I said, look, I damaged this range. I need another range. Can you give it to me? Can you give me a good deal on it? And they go, Pat, you have bailed us out more times than we can count. Over and over again. It's on us. Don't worry about it. Bring it back. We'll put it in the clearance center. We'll sell it. Take the range. Right? Why don't I trust the process? Right? And it was only about money. It was just all about money. But that's the kind of stuff that I have to learn to trust. I have to learn to trust the process. I have to learn to trust God. That if I will do the right thing, in the end, good things will happen. And I know I'm running late, so we'll pick up there. Thanks.